It was a calm afternoon in the small town of Ridgeville. The sun shone softly through the green trees, and children played in the park while their parents watched from the benches. Birds sang and everything looked peaceful. Near the corner of the park, Officer Rahul was walking with his K-9 partner, a strong German shepherd named Max. Max had been trained for years and was known in the town for his sharp senses and loyalty. Rahul loved Max like a friend, not just as a police dog. They had worked together in many searches and rescues, and everyone in the department trusted Max's instincts. That day, Rahul and Max were not on duty. They were just taking a walk after finishing a long morning shift. Rahul smiled as he watched children running and laughing. He thought how quiet and safe the town felt. But Max's ears stood up suddenly. His tail stiffened and he looked toward the far end of the park. Rahul noticed the change and followed Max's gaze. Near the swing area, a little girl in a pink dress was playing with her small doll. She looked around 5 or 6 years old. Her mother was sitting on a nearby bench talking on the phone. Max started to growl very softly. His eyes stayed fixed on a man walking toward the little girl. The man wore a gray jacket and dark cap, and he moved slowly, pretending to look around as if searching for something. Rahul frowned. Something about the man felt strange. He noticed the man's steps were too quiet and careful. Rahul placed his hand gently on Max's back and whispered to calm him, but Max's growl grew stronger. Then, before Rahul could call out, the man suddenly reached the little girl. He bent down and said something to her. The girl looked confused. Max barked loudly. It was a deep, strong bark that shook the quiet park. Everyone turned their heads toward the sound. The mother dropped her phone and stood up, her face pale with worry. The man grabbed the little girl's hand and tried to lift her. The girl cried out, "Let me go!" Rahul shouted from across the park, "Stop right there!" The man looked up, startled, and then ran, carrying the crying child in his arms. Max leaped forward without waiting for a command. Rahul ran after him, calling for help from the radio on his belt. People in the park screamed and pointed in the direction the man was running. The mother shouted her daughter's name again and again. Rahul's heart pounded as he chased them across the field. Max was fast, his paws hitting the ground with power. He barked again and again, following the man's scent. The man ran toward the parking lot behind the park, pushing past people and jumping over a low fence. He tried to reach a small white van parked near the edge. Max got closer with every second. The man looked back and saw the dog chasing him. Fear showed on his face. He ran faster, but Max was trained for moments like this. Rahul shouted into his radio, "Suspect fleeing north of Ridge Park, attempting to enter a white van, child in danger." He heard the quick reply from the control room. Backup was on the way, but he could not wait. He had to reach the girl before the man could escape. Max closed the distance. The man reached the van and opened the back door. The girl screamed. Max jumped forward and bit the man's sleeve. The man yelled in pain and tried to shake him off. Rahul ran up just in time to grab the girl from his other arm. He pulled her back and held her tight. The man kicked at Max, who released the sleeve and barked again, circling around him. Rahul moved between the man and the girl. "Stay back," he said in a firm voice. The man looked around, thinking of running, but sirens could already be heard in the distance. The mother ran up behind Rahul, tears in her eyes, and hugged her daughter. The girl cried and held her mother tight. The man turned and tried to run again toward the other side of the parking lot. Rahul shouted, "Max, go!" Max leaped again, catching the man by the leg and pulling him down. The man fell hard onto the ground. Rahul quickly caught up and handcuffed him. The other officers arrived seconds later, helping to secure the area. The park was now full of noise. Police cars crying, talking, and the sound of Max's heavy breathing after the chase. Rahul knelt beside Max and patted his head. "Good boy," he said softly. Max wagged his tail, still alert but calm now that the danger was over. The little girl smiled at the dog through her tears. "He saved me," she said in a small voice. Her mother nodded, still crying but thankful. Officer Neha, another officer from the unit, arrived and helped to take the man to the police car. She looked at Rahul and said, "Good thing you were here." Rahul nodded but kept his eyes on Max. "It was Max who saw it first," he said. "He knew something was wrong before I did." As the man was taken away, Rahul spoke with the mother to take her statement. She said she did not know the man at all. The girl said he had told her, "Your mother is calling you. Come with me." But she had not believed him. She was about to run when Max barked. That bark had saved her. When the park finally grew quiet again, Rahul and Max sat under a tree. The girl and her mother came to thank them once more. The girl hugged Max gently and the dog sat proudly, his eyes soft and kind again. Rahul smiled. "You did good, partner," he said. Max licked his hand. As the sun began to set, Rahul looked at the white van that was now being checked by the crime team. He wondered who the man was and why he had tried to take the child. Something about the way he ran and the van's license plate made Rahul think this was not a random act. Maybe it was part of something bigger. He decided he would visit the station later that evening to check the man's records. Max sat beside him, watching the officers move around. Rahul knew that Max's sharp sense had saved a life today, but he also knew the story was not over yet. The man had a reason and Rahul needed to find it. The day had started peaceful, but now the air carried a strange tension. The park looked calm again, but Rahul could not shake off the feeling that this was just the beginning of something serious. Max looked up at him as if he felt the same. Rahul patted his head again and whispered, "We'll find out what this is about, boy." Max wagged his tail and rested beside him, his eyes still watching the van carefully. The chase was over, but the mystery was only beginning. That evening, the police station was busy. Officers were writing reports, phones were ringing, and everyone was talking about the park incident. The news had already spread across Ridgeville. People were calling to thank the police and the brave K9 dog who had saved the little girl. Officer Rahul sat at his desk with Max lying beside him. Max's head rested on his paws, but his ears twitched every few seconds as if he was still alert. Rahul looked at the white van through the glass window of the police garage. It had been towed from the park. The man who had tried to take the girl sat in the holding room under watch. Rahul opened the case file. The man's name was written as Ramesh Kumar, age 42, no local address, no family record. His ID looked real, but something about it made Rahul uneasy. It was too clean, too perfect. He looked at the photo on the ID and compared it to the man in custody. The man looked slightly different, maybe older, maybe tired. Rahul leaned back and thought for a moment. He remembered how quickly the man had tried to reach the van. Maybe there was something important inside. Rahul called Officer Neha, who had helped during the arrest. "Neha, let's check the van properly," he said. She nodded and joined him in the garage. They put on gloves and began to search the van. At first, they saw nothing strange. There were some tools, a rope, a few empty boxes, and some plastic covers. But when Neha checked under the driver's seat, she found a small notebook. Rahul opened it carefully. Inside were names and numbers written in neat handwriting. Some names were crossed out, and beside them were small notes like "done" or "moved." Rahul's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Neha asked. Rahul flipped through the pages. "Looks like a list. But of what?" He saw one name that caught his eye. It was written as Anaya, 5 years, Ridgeville Park. It was the same girl who had been almost taken that day. Neha gasped. "This means he planned it." Rahul nodded. "Yes, and maybe there are others too." He took the notebook to the evidence table and called his senior, Inspector Arjun. When Arjun saw the notebook, his face grew serious. "We need to find out who these other children are," he said. "If this list is real, there may be more danger." Rahul felt a cold chill. He looked down at Max, who was now standing near the van, sniffing around the back area. Max barked once and scratched at the floor. Rahul walked over. "What is it, boy?" He crouched down and looked closely. There was a thin wooden board under the van's carpet. Rahul pulled it up carefully and found a hidden compartment. Inside were small packets of candy, children's toys, and a few folded papers. One of the papers had a map of Ridgeville marked with circles. One of the circles was the park where the girl was taken. Another circle was near a school on the other side of town. Inspector Arjun took the map. He was planning something bigger. Maybe more than one person is involved. Neha looked at the other officers. If there are others helping him, they might strike again. Rahul nodded slowly. "We need to question Ramesh now. Maybe he will tell us who else is behind this." In the interrogation room, Ramesh sat quietly with his hands cuffed on the table. His eyes looked tired and his face showed no fear. Rahul entered with Inspector Arjun. Max stayed outside watching through the glass. Rahul started gently. "Ramesh, why did you try to take that little girl?" Ramesh said nothing. He stared at the table. Rahul placed the notebook in front of him. "This was in your van." "It has her name on it. And others too." Tell me what this list means. Ramesh finally looked up. You wouldn't understand, he said in a low voice. Arjun leaned forward. Make us understand then. Ramesh sighed and said, I was told to bring the children. That's all. Rahul frowned. Told by whom? Ramesh shook his head. They don't tell names, they pay. I just follow orders. Arjun's voice became firm. Who gave you the van? Ramesh looked up slowly. It was parked outside the old factory near the river. I was told to use it and wait for a message. Rahul exchanged a glance with Arjun. The old factory had been closed for years. It was known as a quiet place where no one went anymore. After the short questioning, Ramesh was taken back to his cell. Rahul and Arjun went to the main office. We need to search that factory, Arjun said. If there are others, they might still be there. Rahul nodded. We can go early morning. Max will lead the search. That night, Rahul could not sleep well. The image of the notebook and the map stayed in his mind. Max lay beside his bed, sleeping quietly, but even in sleep his ears flicked at every small sound. Rahul looked at him and whispered softly, We have another job tomorrow, friend. Morning came early. The sky was cloudy and the air was cool. Rahul met Arjun, Neha, and 2 other officers near the old factory. The building stood tall and silent. Broken windows, rusted gates, and faded paint made it look abandoned, but Rahul could feel something was not right. Max walked ahead, sniffing the ground. His nose twitched as he followed a faint scent. The officers moved slowly behind him, flashlights ready. Inside, the floor was dusty and old boxes were scattered around. But near the back of the room, Max stopped suddenly and barked. Rahul followed his gaze and saw footprints on the floor, fresh ones. He signaled the team to move quietly. They walked toward a half-open door. Inside was a small office room with papers, food packets, and a radio. Someone had been here recently. Neha picked up a paper from the table. It had a list of times and places. One of the times matched the park incident from yesterday. They were planning more abductions, she said. Before Rahul could answer, Max barked again, louder this time. From the other side of the factory, they heard quick footsteps. Stop! Rahul shouted, running after the sound. 2 figures ran toward the back exit. The officers followed. The men jumped over the fence, trying to escape. Rahul released Max with a short command. Max ran fast, catching one of the men by the arm and pulling him down. The other man ran toward a black car waiting outside. Arjun fired a warning shot in the air, and the driver stopped the car in fear. The officers caught both men within seconds. After they were brought inside, the police found phones and documents linking them to Ramesh. They had messages about moving children from one town to another. The case was bigger than anyone expected. Rahul looked at Max and smiled. You did it again. Max wagged his tail, still alert and proud. Inspector Arjun said, Good work, everyone. We saved many lives today. But we must still find who was leading them. Rahul nodded. He looked at the men they had caught. They were just followers, not leaders. Somewhere out there, someone else was controlling this. As they left the factory, Rahul looked back once more. The cold wind moved through the broken windows. He had a strong feeling that this was not the end. He placed his hand on Max's head and said, We will find the one behind this, no matter how far he hides. Max looked up at him with calm eyes, ready for whatever was next. The next morning, the police station was quiet, but the air felt heavy. The case had become larger than anyone first thought. Officer Rahul sat at his desk, reading through the reports collected from the old factory. Max lay at his feet, his ears flicking every now and then as if listening to the hum of voices around them. Inspector Arjun entered the room with a serious look. We got information from the men we caught, he said. They all worked for someone called Malik. No one has seen him. They said he gives orders through phones and never meets anyone in person. Rahul leaned forward. Did they say what his plan was? Arjun shook his head. Only that they were told to bring children from different towns. There is money moving between cities. It may be a big network, Rahul frowned. If Malik is behind this, we need to find where he operates from. Arjun nodded. That's why I want you and Max to go with Neha to check the warehouse near the highway. It was mentioned in one of the messages found on those phones. Within an hour, Rahul, Neha, and Max were driving toward the highway. The morning traffic was light and the sky was gray. The warehouse was far from the city, surrounded by empty land and tall grass. It looked like an ordinary storage building, but Rahul had learned not to trust appearances. When they reached, the area looked quiet. A few trucks stood outside, their sides covered in dust. Max jumped out of the Jeep and began sniffing the ground. His tail moved slowly, showing he had caught a scent. Rahul followed him toward the back of the building. The door was locked, but there was a small open window. Rahul peered through it. Inside, he saw boxes, chairs, and a small table. It looked empty, but something felt wrong. Max started growling softly. Neha looked at Rahul and whispered, "Should we call for backup?" Rahul nodded. "Yes, but we'll keep watching till they arrive." 10 minutes later, another police jeep arrived with 2 officers. They broke the lock and entered carefully. Inside, the air smelled of oil and metal. The place was dimly lit, and dust floated in the sunlight coming through the cracks in the roof. Max moved forward, sniffing around the boxes. Then he stopped at a large wooden crate and barked. Rahul and Neha exchanged looks. They opened the crate slowly and found several small bags filled with children's clothes and toys. Rahul's heart sank. "This confirms it," he said quietly. They were planning to move more children. One of the other officers found a folder under the table. Inside were printed papers showing lists of delivery routes and coded messages. At the bottom of one page, Rahul saw a name printed faintly, M Industries. He looked up. This might be a company front. Maybe that's where Malik hides. Neha wrote down the name. "We can trace it through business records." As they searched further, Max started barking again. He went toward the back wall, scratching at a spot near the corner. Rahul checked and noticed the sound of air coming from behind the wall. It was hollow. He called the officers. They pushed aside a few boxes and found a small metal door hidden in the wall. It opened into a narrow passage. The air inside was cold. Rahul held his flashlight and moved in first, with Max leading. The passage led to a small underground room. There was a desk, a few computers, and some papers scattered around. Someone had left in a hurry. A half-drunk cup of tea still sat on the table. Neha said, "Someone was here recently. Maybe Malik himself." Rahul turned on one of the computers. It asked for a password. He called the tech team to come and check it. Meanwhile, Max sniffed the floor and found a small keychain under the table. It had a letter M engraved on it. Rahul put it in an evidence bag. By the time the tech team arrived, they managed to unlock the computer. Inside were emails and messages between Malik and his men. The messages mentioned several towns, money transfers, and coded terms like package ready and delivery safe. One message mentioned a date, tomorrow. Another location was marked as the lakeside storage. Rahul looked at Neha. "That's near the water plant outside town. If something is happening tomorrow, we have to be ready." They drove back to the station to report everything. Inspector Arjun listened carefully and said, "Good work. We will plan an operation tonight. Malik might appear to check the final delivery." That night, the team gathered at the station to prepare. Maps were spread across the table and every route was marked. Rahul and Max were at the center of the plan. "Max will lead once we find the signal of movement," Arjun said. "We must act quickly." The officers moved to their positions around the lakeside storage before midnight. The moon was high and the lake reflected the silver light. The storage area was large, with several small sheds and a main building near the water. Everything was quiet except for the sound of crickets. Rahul sat in his jeep watching through binoculars. Max sat beside him, calm but alert. Suddenly a small truck arrived near one of the sheds. 2 men got out and opened the gate. They began moving boxes inside. A few minutes later, another car arrived. Rahul whispered into his radio. Movement confirmed. "Stay ready." A tall man stepped out of the car. He wore a black coat and a hat. Even from a distance, his posture looked confident. Rahul felt sure this was Malik. The man looked around carefully, speaking to his men. Arjun's voice came through the radio. "Wait until we confirm more inside." The officers watched as the men opened one of the boxes. Inside were small blankets and bottles. It was clear they were preparing for something involving children. Rahul's hand tightened on the steering wheel. Max started growling softly, his eyes fixed on the tall man. Rahul whispered, "Easy, boy, not yet." Suddenly, one of the men noticed a small reflection from an officer's flashlight. He shouted, "Police!" The place erupted in chaos. The men began to run in all directions. "Go!" Arjun's voice shouted through the radio. Rahul jumped out of the jeep and Max dashed ahead. The officers surrounded the sheds as sirens blared in the distance. Rahul ran toward the car where Malik was standing. Malik tried to get in and start the engine, but Max leaped at the open door, grabbing his coat sleeve. Malik shouted and pushed him away, then ran toward the dock. Rahul followed fast. The wooden dock shook under their feet as Malik ran to the edge, trying to jump into a small boat. Rahul shouted, "Stop! You're under arrest." Malik turned and threw something toward Rahul, but it fell short. Before he could jump, Max lunged again, pulling him down. The officers reached just in time to help. Malik struggled for a moment, but then gave up, breathing heavily. Rahul cuffed him and said, "It's over." Malik looked up with cold eyes. "You think you stopped it?" "This is only one part," Rahul frowned. "What do you mean?" Malik smiled faintly. "Others will continue. You caught me, but you won't stop them all." Arjun came running and said, "We will find every one of them." The officers took Malik to the car. The rest of the team cleared the area and found more documents in the shed. They showed details of accounts and routes linking several cities. As the sun began to rise, the sky turned orange over the lake. Rahul stood by the water with Max beside him. He looked at the calm waves and said quietly, "We did it, partner." Max wagged his tail and looked up at him, his eyes shining. Rahul smiled and patted his head. "There's still more to do, but today we took a big step." Behind them, the officers loaded the evidence into their cars. Malik sat in the back of the police jeep, silent but defeated. The quiet morning breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint sound of birds waking up. Rahul looked at Max again. "We'll stop the rest too," he said softly. Max barked once, as if to agree. The morning after Malik's arrest, the Ridgeville police station was filled with reporters and curious people. Everyone wanted to know how the police and the brave K9 Max had caught the man who led a child kidnapping network. But Rahul was not celebrating. He sat at his desk reading the new reports while Max rested beside him. Inspector Arjun entered with a file in his hand. "Rahul, I have some bad news," he said in a serious voice. Rahul looked up. "What happened?" Arjun placed the file on the table. "During the night, someone tried to hack into our system. They were searching for the files related to Malik's case. Whoever did this knows exactly what we are investigating." Rahul frowned. "So there are still people working for him?" Arjun nodded. "Yes, and we need to find them before they destroy any evidence. The documents we found in the warehouse point to a name, S. Patel. We believe this person was handling money transfers for Malik. We traced an address near Green Hill Apartments." Rahul stood up immediately. "I will go with Max and Neha to check it." By noon they reached the Green Hill area. It was a quiet part of town, with tall buildings and small shops. The address led them to a 2-story building with a closed door on the ground floor. A sign read, "Patel Logistics." The place looked normal from outside, but Max began sniffing around and growling softly. Rahul whispered, "Stay alert." They knocked, but no one answered. After waiting a minute, Rahul tried the door. It was unlocked. Inside, there was an office with computers, papers, and a faint smell of oil. The windows were covered with thick curtains, making the room dim. Neha turned on her flashlight and looked around. On the table were several ledgers filled with numbers and payment records. Rahul flipped through the pages. "These amounts are too big for a small business," he said. "Look at this." The money came from different states. Neha checked one of the computers. "These files are password protected," she said. "But we can take them back to the station for the tech team." As Rahul was putting the files in a bag, Max barked suddenly. He ran toward a closed door at the back of the office. Rahul and Neha followed carefully. When Rahul opened the door, they saw stairs leading down. The basement was dark and cold. The walls were damp and the air smelled like dust and metal. Max moved slowly, his nose close to the ground. There were boxes stacked on one side and a small table with an old radio. On the floor, Rahul noticed footprints leading to another door. He pushed it open and the sight made him freeze for a second. Inside the small room were several mobile phones, a few maps, and a large board filled with photos and notes. There were pictures of police officers, including Rahul himself, and Max, Neha whispered. "They were watching us." Rahul's eyes moved to the top corner of the board, where a single picture of Malik was connected with red lines to several other photos. One of the faces was marked with the letter S. Another face was circled with a question mark. Rahul pointed at it. "That must be the real leader," he said quietly. Neha took photos of everything for evidence. "We need to leave before someone comes back," she said. As they turned to go, Max suddenly barked sharply. From above, they heard footsteps. Someone had entered the office. Rahul signaled for silence. The footsteps grew louder and stopped near the basement stairs. Two shadows appeared at the top. A man's voice said, "Check the basement." "They might have found it," Rahul whispered. "Hide behind the boxes." They crouched low and Max stayed perfectly still. Two men came down with flashlights. Rahul could see their shoes from behind the boxes. One of them said, "The door is open. Someone's been here." Before they could look further, Max growled and jumped out. His bark echoed in the small basement. The men shouted in surprise. Rahul stepped out and pointed his gun. "Police, drop your weapons." One man tried to run, but Max grabbed his arm, pulling him down. The other man raised his hands. Neha quickly cuffed them both. When they were taken to the station, the men refused to speak at first. But after hours of questioning, one of them finally said, "We only work for Patel. He got orders from someone named Rana." Inspector Arjun looked serious when he heard that name. "Rana used to run illegal trade years ago. We thought he was gone." Rahul said, "If he is back, he might be the one Malik was talking about." Arjun nodded. "That's likely. We must catch him before he disappears again." They checked every detail the men had shared. Rana was known for moving from place to place, never staying long. He had a warehouse near the old railway yard outside the city. The team planned to go there at night when it was quiet. When night fell, the officers surrounded the railway yard. It was a silent place with broken tracks and old trains covered in rust. The air was cool and fog moved slowly between the metal frames. Rahul moved ahead with Max. The dog's sharp eyes scanned the area. Neha whispered through the radio, "No movement near the north side." Rahul replied, "Copy that." Checking the main shed, they reached a large shed at the center of the yard. Its door was half open. Max sniffed near the entrance and barked softly. Rahul stepped in with his flashlight. Inside, there were old boxes and broken furniture. Everything looked abandoned until Max stopped near a pile of wooden crates. Rahul moved closer and found a trapdoor under them. He opened it slowly and saw stairs going down into a dark tunnel. He called Arjun and said, "We found a passage underground." The officers gathered and they entered the tunnel one by one. It was narrow and damp, with dim lights flickering on the ceiling. They moved quietly, following Max's lead. After some distance, they reached a large underground room. Several people were working there, packing boxes and loading them onto small carts. Rana stood at the center, giving orders. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a scar on his cheek. When he saw the police lights, he froze for a second, then shouted, "Run!" Chaos filled the tunnel. The workers ran in every direction. Rahul shouted, "Police, stop!" Rana tried to escape through another passage, but Max was faster. He chased him down, barking loudly. Rana looked back and tried to push boxes to block the dog's path, but Max jumped over them easily. Rahul followed close behind. Rana reached a dead end and turned around, holding a metal rod. "Stay back," he shouted. Rahul pointed his gun. "Drop it now!" Rana hesitated, then swung the rod, but Max leaped forward and bit his arm, making him drop the weapon. Rahul quickly cuffed him. Inspector Arjun and the others reached soon after. They found documents and computers in the underground office showing how Rana had built the network and used others like Malik and Patel to move money and people. Arjun looked at Rahul and said, "It's over now. We have the evidence and the man behind it." Rahul nodded, breathing deeply. Thanks to Max, we caught him before he could run again. As they brought Rana out of the tunnel, the early light of dawn touched the sky. The fog began to fade and the sound of birds grew louder. Back at the station, the team worked through the morning to complete reports. Rana sat quietly in his cell, knowing he had no escape left. The files and photos were safely locked in evidence. Rahul looked at Max, who was resting beside his chair. "You did it again, partner," he said softly. Max wagged his tail and looked at him with bright eyes. Inspector Arjun walked over and said, "We'll need to make a statement to the press tomorrow. The city should know how important Max was in all this." Rahul smiled. "He deserves it." That night, when Rahul went home, he sat on the porch with Max beside him. The stars shone above and the town was quiet again. But Rahul knew the peace was fragile. People like Rana always left traces behind. He looked at Max and said, "If there's more danger out there, we'll face it together." Max barked softly, as if giving his promise. The morning light crept through the tall windows of the small police office. Rafi sat at the edge of his chair, his eyes fixed on Bruno, who rested near his feet. The big canine dog was calm now, tail tapping the floor lightly as if he understood that his work was done. The night had been long and tense, but at last everything was clear. Inspector Adil entered the room holding a file in his hand. He looked tired yet satisfied. He gave Rafi a nod before sitting across from him. The sound of papers flipping filled the quiet room. "You did well last night," Adil said softly. "If Bruno had not barked at the right time, that man might have escaped with the girl." Rafi gave a small smile. "He always knows before I do. Sometimes I feel Bruno understands danger better than humans." He reached down and patted Bruno's head. The dog's eyes were full of life and loyalty. Adil leaned back in his chair and looked at the file. "The man's name is Sajid," he said. He was pretending to be the girl's uncle. But he was part of a group that planned to take children from the park. We found his phone. It had messages and pictures that confirmed everything. "You and Bruno stopped something big." Rafi's chest tightened as he thought of the little girl Alina and her mother. He still remembered how Alina had run into her mother's arms after the rescue. The look of relief on her mother's face was something he would never forget. Adil closed the file and stood up. "You should take Bruno for a walk. He earned it. And after that, you both can rest. You've done enough for today." Rafi nodded and whistled for Bruno. The dog stood up eagerly, tail wagging as they stepped outside. The morning air was cool and gentle. Birds sang softly in the nearby trees, and the streets were calm again after a night full of sirens and shouting. They walked toward the small park near the station, the same park where everything had started. The grass was fresh with dew, and a few children were already playing near the swings. Bruno sniffed the air, his ears twitching as if he was checking that everything was safe. As Rafi watched the children play, he thought about how quickly things could change. One moment could bring danger and the next could bring peace. He felt proud that Bruno's sharp sense and loyalty had made that peace possible. A small voice called out behind him, "Officer Rafi." He turned and saw Alina running toward him, holding her mother's hand. Her mother smiled gratefully, her eyes filled with emotion. Rafi bent down as Alina reached him. She held a small flower in her hand and offered it to him shyly. "This is for Bruno," she said. "He saved me." Rafi smiled and nodded. He took the flower and gently placed it near Bruno's collar. The dog wagged his tail happily and gave a small bark, making Alina giggle. Her mother looked at Rafi and said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. You and Bruno gave me back my world." "You don't need to thank us," Rafi said kindly. "It's our job to keep everyone safe. Bruno just did what he was trained to do." Alina's mother knelt beside Bruno and petted him softly. "Still, I will always be grateful," she said. They stayed there for a few minutes, enjoying the calm morning. The sound of laughter from other children filled the park. Rafi watched them and felt something warm in his chest. This was why he had joined the force, to protect people who could not protect themselves. Later that afternoon, Rafi returned to the station. Adil met him near the entrance. "We just got news," he said. "Because of your work, the rest of the group has been caught. The man you stopped gave us the information we needed. It's over." Rafi smiled in relief. "That's good news, sir." Adil patted his shoulder. "You and Bruno should both get medals for this." Rafi looked at Bruno, who stood proudly beside him. "He deserves it more than I do," he said with a laugh. That evening, the police department held a small ceremony. Officers gathered in the courtyard. The chief gave a short speech, praising Rafi and Bruno for their bravery. As Rafi stood on the stage, he looked down at his partner. Bruno's head was high, his dark eyes alert and proud. When the medal was placed around Bruno's neck, everyone clapped. Rafi could not help but smile. "This medal belongs to him," he said. "He was the real hero." After the ceremony, Rafi and Bruno walked through the quiet streets once again. The city looked peaceful under the orange glow of sunset. People waved at them as they passed. Children pointed at Bruno with excitement, and some came forward to pet him. Bruno remained calm, his tail wagging gently. He seemed to know he was loved by everyone now. As they reached the same park, Rafi sat on a bench and looked at the horizon. "You know, Bruno," he said softly, "sometimes I think fate brought us together for a reason. You have saved many lives, but last night, you reminded everyone that a dog's loyalty can be stronger than anything else." Bruno looked up at him and gave a low bark. As if agreeing, the wind moved gently through the trees, and the sky turned darker with shades of purple and blue. The park lights began to glow. Rafi leaned back and watched Bruno settle near his feet. The city felt safe again, and he knew that as long as Bruno was beside him, it would stay that way. Far away, in another corner of the city, officers continued to follow leads from the captured man. They uncovered files, pictures, and names of other criminals. Rafi's report helped them rescue more children in the following days. Each time he heard the news, he looked at Bruno and smiled, knowing his brave partner had started it all. Weeks later, Alina's mother visited the police station again. She brought a small drawing made by Alina. It showed Bruno standing tall with a little girl holding his paw. On the top, in uneven letters, it said, "My hero Bruno." Rafi placed the drawing on the wall of his office. Every time he saw it, he felt reminded of courage, trust, and loyalty, the three things Bruno had shown that day. Life went back to normal after that, but Bruno's story spread around the city. People began calling him the guardian dog. Rafi never minded the attention, but he always made sure Bruno got extra treats after work. On their walks, strangers would stop them thanking Rafi and patting Bruno's head. Some children would shout his name from far away. Bruno loved the attention, wagging his tail proudly. One evening, Rafi looked at his loyal friend and said, "You know, Bruno, heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear fur." Bruno barked softly and rested his head on Rafi's knee. The world was quiet again and peace had returned. The K9 who had barked furiously that day had not only saved a life, but had also reminded everyone of what true loyalty and courage looked like. And for Rafi, there could be no better partner, no better friend, and no stronger bond than the one he shared with Bruno, the dog who trusted his heart and never gave up.